Greetings, comrades. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to another video, or I should say Tank Tuesday. Today, I'm going to be discussing American Super Heavy Tank projects, my opinions on them, certain specifications, and if they would have worked. So let's get straight into this video. The first tank that is presented on screen is the American T-29. This was a heavy tank designed to counter the Nazi King Tiger tank during the Second World War. It had a high-velocity 105mm gun and 4 inches of frontal armor. The 105mm gun would have been very effective in combat, but this tank was considered under-armored due to its light 4 inches of armor and was not passed for combat trials. On screen now, we are presented with the American T-30 tank. This had a very heavy 155mm gun and had an increased armor to 8 inches of frontal armor and 11 inches on the gun manlet or the gun shield. This tank would have been much more armored and much more suitable to counter German tanks like the King Tiger and, in my opinion, possibly the Mouse tank. The only problem with this tank was that the 155mm gun, its velocity was not considered high enough for combat, and the shell had to have an explosive projectile for the speed velocity, since it was a very heavy shell. And like I said, it needed the extra blast charge to propel it. This tank was also not put into World War II combat because it came too late for any wartime service, but it's all post-war trials. Here we see the T-32 tank. This was basically a buffed version of the Pershing. There's nothing that special about it. It just had increased armor, a better gun, and it was also not passed for combat trials. Or I also gave it a nickname. I called it the Pershing Jumbo because there's an American tank called the Sherman Jumbo, which is basically a Sherman tank with better armor. So this one is basically that same thing. I call it the Pershing Jumbo. Here's the last tank. I personally think this would have been the best tank to counter Nazi heavy tanks in the Second World War, the American T-34. Yes, the Americans did have a tank called T-34, but it would have been redesignated to M-34 later on because the T, well, was just there. I'm pretty sure it meant test pilot vehicle, since that's what they call test tanks. On airplanes, they use the letter X for experimental, but for tanks, they use T. So the American T-34, it would have been later designated M-34, would have been the perfect match, in my opinion. The reason I say this is because it had a very powerful 120mm gun and 8 inches of frontal armor and various other maximum armor plating on places like the turret and the hull. The only problem with this tank, according to the Army, is it was too heavy. It weighed 65 tons. Here is our last tank, the biggest tank of all, and also the most armored on the frontal plate, the T-28/95. This thing would have been a beast in combat. It had 12 inches of frontal armor, a very powerful 105mm gun, and also 4 inches of armor on the side, which were sloped, so the armor would be technically doubled due to physics. Now, this tank, I believe 2 or 3 were built, and it was designed to smash through the Siegfried line, the German Siegfried line, attack the home islands of Japan, the invasion of Japan. It was also supposed to be a bunker buster, supposed to destroy bunkers, as well as a heavy tank destroyer. This tank, in my opinion, probably would have been more than capable of defeating the massive German Nazi Maus tank. The Maus tank, its frontal armor plate had 8.9 inches of armor, but the high velocity gun on the T-28-95 surely would have penetrated it, and also its 12 inches of frontal armor would have made it difficult for the Maus's 128mm Pak 43 gun to penetrate it. So, but like I said, or not like I said, but this tank also came too late for wartime service, but was used as a post-war development vehicle. Sadly, one of the vehicles caught fire and got destroyed, but there was one of them that still remains today that was left abandoned for over 2 decades until the Army realized that they had accidentally abandoned it after the 1940s. So it is now currently on display at Fort Benning. My personal thoughts on these tanks is that they were very good designs, but they came too late for wartime service. Personally, the 2 best tanks I think that would have been more than effective in combat are the T-28-95 and the American T-34, which will be later designated M-34, like I've said a few times. That's all for today's video. Just wanted to get a quick video out there. Hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya, comrades.